He actually thinks I'm objecting to something he put on his show about me. I had no idea what you put on your show about me. I couldn't care less, sir. I was mocking you for trying to lecture journalists on how to do journalism based on your own failure to speak truth to power. That's what you failed. You only did it when you knew your candidate was going to cost you up and down.
Kelly just went full demolition mode on George Clooney and Robert De Niro. Yes, you heard that right. It's the celebrity takedown absolutely no one had on their bingo card. Picture a Hollywood roast on steroids with enough drama to power a week's worth of soap operas. What did she say to leave these icons stunned? Buckle up, this verbal smackdown is wild.
She and George get together and they start navel gazing on stage about themselves, of course, and their vaunted profession and how bad, how just terrible the media is, and had the following exchange.
What we do in this is we talk about the responsibility of journalists to hold truth to power, right? That's our goal. And so if you're doing that, and we don't tell people what to think, when we show that montage at the end, for instance, you see Megyn Kelly. She's who's come out and said, I'm not a journalist. I didn't say I was a journalist.
Neither is she.
Megyn Kelly stepping into the ring with George Clooney and Robert De Niro? Now that's a plot twist no one in Hollywood scripted. Imagine it. Two legendary actors, practically untouchable with their polished golden reputations, suddenly getting torched by Megyn's signature no-holds-barred takedown. It's not just David versus Goliath. It's David with a flamethrower, going up against two Goliaths. And let's just say she didn't come to play nice.
Robert De Niro, who's got a severe case of the TDS, is in conference right now, as all of the muckety-mucks are. And he's very unhappy about what Trump is doing to try to keep American filmmaking in America by slapping tariffs on foreign-made films so that he can basically try to force people to make them domestically again for the American audience that they're meant to serve. And here's what De Niro said on Tuesday.
America's Philistine president has had himself appointed head of one of our premier cultural institutions.
Let's start with George Clooney, shall we? The man who's practically Hollywood's golden boy. Oozing charm, humanitarian spirit, and that effortless, I just saved the planet before brunch energy. You know the type? Always grinning in charity photos, cradling starving children. In every conflict zone and delivering speeches like he's the moral compass of the entire industry. Honestly, Clooney could probably snag an Oscar just for standing there looking righteously noble.
Because I was Wendy Burcham doesn't make me actually Wendy Burcham and capable of speaking about what it's like to be married to Mr. Burcham or a shop teacher. But George Clooney is now starring on Broadway in Good Night and Good Luck. I guess at the end of this show, he turns around and looks at the audience and offers a lecture on how journalism is imploding, and this is why, I gather, he was profiled on 60 Minutes last.
But Megyn Kelly's not buying the Clooney fairy tale. She sees straight through the glossy PR veneer, the carefully curated image that's sold millions on the idea that George is a saint draped in Armani. Here's the kicker. While he's flying around the world preaching about climate change and social justice, he's also racking up a carbon footprint big enough to blanket the globe. Private jets? Check. Luxury yachts? Naturally. Hypocrisy? Megyn's calling it out, loud and clear.
You guys know Phil Wegman. He's a buddy of mine, wonderful White House correspondent for Real Clear Politics. He's a serious journalist, right? And he quote tweets the press release and he says, one of the speakers will be Robert De Niro. My hand to God, my first thought was, good for Phil. This is funny. This is a good, funny joke. It's nice to see Phil let his hair down. And then I was like, wait a minute, Phil wouldn't make this joke in this situation. And I still couldn't believe it was real. I am absolutely flummoxed. That is the dumbest move that I've ever seen a presidential campaign make in my entire life.
Big-time celebrity globetrotter living the high life while lecturing the rest of us about recycling our soda cans? Yeah, Megyn Kelly's not having it. In her eyes, Clooney's humanitarian persona often feels less like genuine activism and more like a slick marketing campaign. George Clooney, the good guy, TM. It's not about changing the world, it's about dominating the headlines. Picture Clooney as a walking, talking TED Talk with perfect lighting, flawless sound bites, and just the right amount of empathetic squint. It looks like sincerity, but Megyn suggests it's often nothing more than polished optics. Spoiler, sometimes what you're seeing isn't a savior. It's a well-rehearsed performance. And then there's his Hollywood resume. Sure, he's produced films and shows loaded with social messages, and that's admirable on the surface. But Megyn argues many of these projects are so carefully sanitized, so PR-friendly, they barely graze the issues they pretend to explore. Think more virtue signaling, less actual risk-taking. It's like wading ankle-deep into a conversation that demands a full plunge. Meanwhile, as Clooney saves the world one Instagram post at a time, Megyn's not shy about pointing out the contradictions. If you're going to preach about justice and inequality, maybe don't fly private jets to galas dripping in wealth and excess. The very systems you're supposedly critiquing. Hypocrisy? Absolutely. And Megyn's not just calling it out, she's putting it on full blast.
See, you went to Darfur, that's great. What about our guys? Because I never saw you at a Tunnel to Towers fundraiser, at a gathering for our Navy SEALs, and I've been to many of them. I never saw you at any of the public appearances that I've attended where our injured soldiers are just back from war, seeking a helping hand. I guess you never saw the interviews I've done of the Medal of Honors winners. They weren't very interesting to you, like Dakota Meyer. You didn't want to hear his story.
Now shifting gears to Robert De Niro, the grizzled icon of Hollywood's tough guy club, who's been politically outspoken for decades. On screen, he's made a career playing no-nonsense characters who don't take orders from anyone. Off-screen, he's channeled that same energy into his political commentary, treating every public appearance and social media post like an open mic night for righteous fury. The problem? According to Megyn Kelly, it's gotten stale. De Niro's political rants, once fiery and attention-grabbing, now feel like the cinematic version of a skipping record. Same outrage, different day. Megyn compares it to yelling at the weather. Loud, dramatic, and ultimately pointless. The passion's still there, but the message? Not so much. What once felt like bold activism now lands closer to cranky celebrity theatrics. But Megyn doesn't. Stop at the volume. She also takes aim at the contradictions. While De Niro's busy lecturing the world on morality and justice, his own business ventures don't always reflect the ideals he preaches. The image he presents, righteous, uncompromising, isn't always backed up by action. In Megyn's view, it's a classic case of do as I say, not as I do, delivered with dramatic flair but lacking in follow-through. The result? A lot of noise, but not much substance.
Hypocrisy is alive and well amongst these sanctimonious leftists. From Kimmel to De Niro to Stephanopoulos, they want you to believe they're better than you, more virtuous, more decent. But we all know the truth. They lie. They sin. They do the very things they accuse you of and the things that they say they would never do. Evil things. Like try to destroy people based on feigned outrage from which they spare their own side, or playing politics with a...
Megyn also zeroes in on De Niro's habit of jumping on every political bandwagon that rolls by. It's less about standing for a consistent ideology and more about making sure he's always front and center, no matter the cause. The once iconic, tough guy now looks more like a confused celebrity activist who can't decide which soapbox to climb onto next. Throw in a few misfired tweets and some unhinged interviews, and you've got a brand of advocacy that's more exhausting than it is inspiring. But here's where things take a turn. Neither Clooney nor De Niro has issued any response to Megyn's takedown. No Twitter feud, no press statements, no pointed interviews, just silence. And that silence, it speaks volumes. Megyn's not just critiquing two Hollywood legends, she's peeling back the curtain on the fragility hiding behind their polished images. The lack of response could mean a lot. Maybe they're too busy prepping their next carefully curated appearance. Or maybe they're quietly recalibrating their PR playbook. Either way, Megyn's power lies in what she's exposing. The contradictions, the performative wokeness, the theatrics that pass for activism. Because looking virtuous is easy when you've got a team paid to make you look that way. Megyn's cutting through the glitz to spotlight the truths Hollywood would rather keep tucked under the red carpet.
Garbage outside today. Robert De Niro, officially sent by the Biden campaign, makes himself look like an idiot and reminds us why Trump is so popular.
It's so stupid. It was colossally stupid. If you're going to send somebody to go speak outside of the Trump trial, make it someone who's universally beloved, like a Michelle Obama. You know, she's not universally loved. She's not loved on the right. But I'm saying, like, at least within the left and the center left and maybe even some center righties. Robert De Niro has gone so hard partisan over the past 8 years. He is like example number 1 of Trump derangement syndrome.
The unseen flaws behind the glimmering facades of George Clooney and Robert De Niro. It's like spotting a crack in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Except this crack is a full-blown canyon, and the walk itself might be more crooked than anyone wants to admit. These two Tinseltown titans have glided through their careers with a level of polished charm that almost distracts you from the mess behind the scenes. Awkward missteps, questionable choices, and the occasional ethical faceplant. Take Clooney, for example. He's Hollywood's go-to poster boy for humanitarianism. The guy who not only adopts puppies, but also, allegedly, saves the entire world in his spare time. But scratch beneath the surface, and you'll find a filmography peppered with projects that make you raise an eyebrow. Some are cloaked in political correctness, yet mysteriously manage to dodge the very social issues they claim to address. Clooney's resume includes more than a few roles that feel less like brave artistic statements and more like cushy, non-controversial paychecks. And let's not forget the moments where his loud activism somehow steers clear of confronting Hollywood's own elitist hypocrisy. It's the classic case of preaching about climate change, from the comfort of a climate-controlled penthouse high above the fray.
Moving to Canada if he wins, and he's never going to leave the White House if he wins. We're going to have Trump forevermore. I mean, hello, I hate to break it to you because I realize you're advanced age too, Robert, but people die. So he will leave. One way or the other, he's going to go. And in the not too distant future, even if Trump says he shouldn't have to. But in any event, he didn't do that the last time, Paul. Can you really picture a scenario in which Trump is more determined to hold on to power than he was at the last time in 2020, going into 2021? And what did he do ultimately? He left. He did leave. He did it under protest. He was a baby about it. He pouted and then some. But he left.
And then there's De Niro, Hollywood's longtime tough guy, known for gruff scowls and characters who don't flinch in the face of confrontation. But behind that iconic glare lies a career filled with choices that don't always line up with the morally outraged persona he loves to project in interviews. Despite his reputation for speaking truth to power, De Niro's own resume includes more than a few behind-the-scenes dramas and quiet sidesteps around the very controversies. His characters so boldly confronted on screen. The irony, the man who gave us the legendary "You talking to me?" moment now often seems to duck the hard questions when the spotlight turns personal. While he's busy lobbing political jabs from the sidelines, unanswered questions about his own consistency and accountability hover like paparazzi drones, persistent, buzzing, and impossible to ignore. Hollywood's elite love playing the role of moral compass, perched on soapboxes so tall they're practically visible from the International Space Station. But the moment the mirror turns back on them, cue the stagehands rushing in to change the set, dim the lights, and steer the narrative elsewhere. Because in Hollywood, hypocrisy isn't just a punchline, it's practically part of the survival guide.
Asked me about my recent dust-up with George Clooney, who rather than focusing on his waning acting career is commenting on yours truly and my journalism. And I had a little response to him on the show the other day, and here's that exchange when that came up.
You don't, on your show, also shy away from controversy. I saw that you addressed George Clooney's comments. Why did you feel the need to respond?
Oh, because it's too delicious not to. Honestly, George Clooney trying to advise me on how to practice journalism. Take care, honey. Okay. You know what? He should call me up. I would love to talk to him about it. He's obviously got thoughts on me. So let's do that. That'll be fun. So, Mark, it was basically a night of antagonism.
Preach virtue? Sure, but don't expect anyone to ask follow-up questions about those cushy studio deals or the eyebrow-raising casting choices. It's the classic Hollywood game of do as I say, not as I do, where the stakes are red carpets, glossy magazine spreads, and endless brand endorsements. Enter Megyn Kelly, the unfiltered outsider with no allegiance to Tinseltown's fragile ecosystem. She's not here to flatter egos or hand out gold stars for good intentions. Armed with a sharp tongue and an unflinching spotlight, she's exposing what everyone else tiptoes around. No sugarcoating, no polite deflections, just brutal honesty, delivered with surgical precision. While Clooney and De Niro float through the industry on clouds of curated personas and selective memory, Megyn slices through the smoke with the subtlety of a scalpel. But make no mistake, this isn't just a hit job on Hollywood royalty for the sake of drama. Her critique digs deeper than tabloid fodder. She's calling out the shallow underbelly of celebrity activism, the kind that thrives on hashtags, headlines, and late-night sound bites, but rarely follows through. Because real influence, that requires more than a speech or a photo op. It demands consistency, accountability, and integrity, even when the cameras are off and no one's clapping.
I spent the past 20 years interviewing people like Suzette Kelo, who owned the little pink house that got seized by her local government, declaring government domain, a decision that went all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court, like the cake baker in Colorado, who didn't want to bake a gay wedding cake because it violated his religious beliefs. Oh, and by the way, also the gay couple he offended. People like triple and quadruple amputees back from Iraq and Afghanistan. What did you do to help the hundreds?
Clooney and De Niro, for all their star power, have built empires on image and attitude, a glossy facade that dazzles but often distracts. Meanwhile, Megyn Kelly is the one pulling back the curtain, revealing the man behind the magic who maybe isn't as flawless as we once believed. Her sharp truth and biting humor aren't just for show. They're a wake-up call to a culture that too often confuses performative virtue with real change. So what's next in this unscripted Hollywood drama? Will Clooney and De Niro dust off their tailored suits and rehearse fresh lines for their next big moral stance? Or will they quietly retreat behind the scenes, hoping the spotlight moves on before the cracks get any wider? The silence from these heavyweights is telling. Sometimes the best response is no response, especially when the spotlight feels less like admiration and more like interrogation. One thing's clear, the glamorous facade of Hollywood's moral giants isn't as untouchable as it once seemed. With Megyn Kelly's critiques ringing loud and clear, the stage is set for more celebrity reality checks. Because when the glitter fades and the cameras stop rolling, it's the real stories, messy, complicated, and imperfect, that shine brightest. In this ongoing saga, truth wrapped in sarcasm and wit becomes the star that refuses to be ignored. What's most fascinating is how this critique exposes a bigger issue in celebrity culture, the gap between genuine influence and performative virtue signaling. Clooney and De Niro, despite their fame and influence, sometimes seem trapped in the roles they play off-screen. They preach accountability, but dodge scrutiny. They champion causes, yet avoid confronting inconvenient truths about their own lifestyles and choices. Megyn's message is clear and sharp. Real leadership isn't about speeches or Instagram posts. It's about consistent action and accountability, even when no one's watching. It's about being honest with yourself before trying to be a hero to the masses. If Clooney and De Niro want to keep their seats at Hollywood's moral high table, maybe it's time for some serious self-reflection. The takeaway? Megyn Kelly's takedown isn't just celebrity gossip. It's a wake-up call. The next time you see a glossy photo of Clooney hugging a child or De Niro shouting into a camera, remember, there's more behind the curtain than meets the eye. Sometimes it takes someone unafraid to throw shade to remind us that not everything that glitters is gold. So, what happens next? Will Clooney and De Niro silently tweak their PR strategies, double down on their polished images, or finally acknowledge the cracks in their facades? The silence is deafening, and Megyn's critique lingers like a perfectly delivered mic drop. She's brought those flaws front and center, and suddenly, even the biggest stars look a little less untouchable. This isn't just entertainment, it's reality TV for grown-ups, and it's deliciously savage. Stay tuned, because when Megyn's on the attack, nobody's safe.